What is up, everyone? Welcome back to episode 3, numero tres of the Boost Hub podcast. So I know last episode we left off saying that we would have Nassim on it to discuss what happened October 6th at Race Motive with his car. But as you can see, he's not here today with us. But we will be discussing some other things going on in the shop. As you can see, we have a bunch of cars behind us, a bunch of engines in the teardown bay. But today, Matthew is back here with me. And we are going to be discussing our favorite platform. And by favorite, that is so sarcastic. And I guess I'll hand it over to Matthew to tell you guys what we're going to be talking about today.
What's up, everybody? So, it's kind of hard to see in this shot. Maybe right here, over here. I'm doing this backwards. We got some engines out. We have a 4.2 liter BNS out of a B7 RS4. We're doing the timing chain components on that. Fuel injectors, obviously stripped down all the gaskets to get replaced. What else are we doing on that?
Basically a whole reseal.
Yeah.
It's a whole reseal from top to bottom.
Oh yeah, we went in there because the exhaust manifold headers were leaking, at least in the driver's side. And to do that, that's an engine out, which is crazy. And when we had the engine out, we had to pull timing covers off, and that's when we noticed, oh, hey, it'd be wise to just knock this out right now and just be done with it. So, yeah, there's that.
Which that's not what we're talking about today, obviously.
No, that's what we're going to be going over.
Just talking about what's in the shop right now.
Yeah. So behind me, we have a E92 335 XI, and then behind Elyse, what you saw earlier, is also an E92 335 XI. I think I want to say this one is 2008, right?
No, I think that's a 2010.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
It's LCI?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure about that?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
The VINs are so close. The last 7 is so
yeah,
close.
I'm pretty sure this one's a 2010 and this one's either a 08 or 09 behind me. But don't hold us to that. I'm almost positive the black one behind Matt, the E92, is a 2010. But
I have my computer here. I'll log in and take a look and see exactly what year that is.
Mr. Smarty Pants, no one needs to actually fact check you. But
so no, I just want to make sure I'm statistically correct on what year it is. Factually correct. On what year it is. So both of these cars have built engines. Now, we did not build the engines in-house. I refuse to build an N54 in-house primarily because it is hard to come across good cores. It's almost impossible to find a good core. So we linked up with an engine builder out in Pennsylvania to basically get both of these engines built for us. And we just removed them, stripped it down, and had both blocks sent over to the engine builder out in PA, had them rebuilt, dropped them off, and basically, in addition to installing the engines, we had to correct a bunch of previous work that was done. And
there was a lot.
Yeah.
It was like I said previously, in our first podcast episode, we are just going to be unfiltered. There is going to be no filtering with any of us on this podcast. So we are just going to straight shoot it with all of you guys. So like Matt said, we have these two M54s here. We didn't do any of the work previously before they came to us. But I think Matthew and I could both agree, as you probably have heard us say this before through our social media accounts, we despise the N54 platform. And we will obviously get into that.
Yeah, despise is a pretty nasty, harsh word.
I despise it.
It's more along the lines of, we refuse to work on them. And both of these N54s are for two very good customers / friends. Two guys who have known for quite a long time. So that's part of the reason why we're doing it, because there is a mutual understanding in what's going on with these bills, right?
Yeah.
So
they're problem children, basically.
Yeah, and both of these customers, are well aware of all of the issues that these vehicles have, and it's not the first time that they're going around getting this built done. So
no, unfortunately, the N54 behind Matt, E92, I think has been built 3 times.
I believe it has been 3 times now. Yeah, it's been built 3 times.
And just so you guys know, the E92 behind Matt came in on a tow truck to us. It didn't even drive. It didn't get driven to us. It was towed to us because that's how bad it was. Basically, there was just a bunch of knocking. And previously before that, it had gone to the dyno and quote unquote, it was our customer was told that, oh, it just spun a rod, no big deal. But then obviously once we tore it down, both of these N54s were just beyond.
Yeah, we got a call from the engine builder because the black one you see behind me, we actually did not necessarily strip that down as far as pulling the head off. We just pulled the block out and said, hey, it's ready, come pick it up. And when he got the block, maybe a couple days went by, he gave us a call and sent some pictures over. It was pretty upsetting. Someone used an actual angle grinder on the crankshaft, which you can never do. So we'll get in depth and detail, but let's, I guess, concentrate first back on that original statement, despising N54s. So,
all right, despise was a bad word to use, okay? I won't use despise. They're just fucking problem children. And it's just every single N54 that we've ever dealt with has just been a fucking problem. And excuse my harsh language, but that's what it basically is. And it just, I guess it's because it's the platform that I started on within the BMW community that I just have a really, it's a hard pill to swallow because it's just one of those platforms that just, there's nothing that ever goes right with them.
So, yeah, she's not wrong. The N54 is a problematic engine platform. The E-chassis, I think it's not just the N54.
Beg to differ, but okay.
Well, I guess let's start with an example, right? So, number one, the N54 was BMW's first turbocharged engine in like 20 years, 15 or 20 years. And not only is it turbocharged, it's twin turbocharged. So this is, or was rather, a learning curve from BMW in relation to high pressure fuel injection with a high pressure fuel pump. So you have your low pressure, you have your high pressure pump, and then we have 6 individual DI, which is known as direct injection fuel injectors. It was a newer, not brand new back in 06 when the car was released or the engine was released, but it was a newer type of fuel delivery system in relation to BMWs, right? So you have your high pressure fuel system that was faulty from the beginning. It was a massive learning curve for BMW. And then the other big problem is your turbochargers. A lot of these companies were quick to market, you know, the split second, the little piggyback, little turbo tuner. Then you had the JB4.
Yeah, JB4, I think like that's where the platform really rocketed for them.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah. Terry over at BMS was one of the first guys to really pioneer any sort of tune-in solution for that car, so to speak.
And then came MHD.
MHD.
Yeah.
What am I forgetting? What am I forgetting before MHD? That was it. MHD was the go-to tuning platform as far as a full vehicle flash.
Yeah, it was rough. Back in the day when you used MHD, it only could be used on an Android tablet. And basically you could, case in point, I used to be the one that used to flash a lot of these E9X chassis. Literally, you could not leave the vehicle. So if I started the flash, I would have to sit in the car for the entire 45-minute duration that it was flashing. And it was horrible.
Well, I mean, you chose not to just simply,
I know, but at the same time,
and just
at the same time, most of the time it was like you guys were working on it, so it was difficult for me to like get out of the car and then to see if it failed. God forbid it failed, because that's what happened most of the time. Or it would start and it'd get to 2-3%, which would take fucking 10 minutes, and then it would fail on you. Then you'd have to go back in and do it again. It was just headache after headache. But now MHD is a lot better.
You're not wrong. MHD has came a pretty far way since inception. You know, the F chassis and the G chassis leaps and bounds compared to the E chassis from, you know, what's this, 15 years ago now.
Wow.
So, you know, Terry Berger Motorsports, the JB4, one of the first guys to pioneer a piggyback, so to speak, for this platform. And so here's where the problem compounds. These cars weren't that expensive back in the day. I think.
What was base?
I don't know what the base price was, but I can tell you this much. My 335 from 2008 was.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that.
That was manual transmission.
Yeah.
Montego Blue, sports package.
Non-XI, but.
Yeah, rear-wheel drive. I don't think I had leather seats. I had vinyl leatherette. I want to say 42 is the sticker, $42,000. and the deal was cut at 38.5 or 39 out the door.
Which is not bad because you're not really getting that now, if you think about it. Anything entry level is just kind of shit at this point. And it was a 6-cylinder too.
Yeah, but compared to now, I mean, yeah, you got inflation, so we really can't. That's apples to oranges. But I think when it comes
also 10 years, 10, 15 years
15,
ago.
16 years ago. Yeah, you know, we're approaching 20 years.
It's crazy.
You were able to place an order for this in fall of 2006. So 18 years ago. Yeah.
That's wild.
So anyway, the problem is these guys were throwing the JB4s in the car and up in the boost on some really, really tiny, don't hold me to this, TD03s. Mitsubishi was the OEM. Yeah, Mitsubishi TD03s.
Sounds right.
I want to say the nominal boost pressure from the factory was like 8.8 psi. So these are really tiny snails, guys, really small turbochargers. And you would up the boost, and I want to say on a piggyback, you were getting close to, 60, 70, 80 horsepower. So you're taking a car that was made for 300 horsepower, 300 pound-feet of torque from the factory, and you were making now almost 4 at the crank, which is pretty impressive. But no one seems to understand that the car at the time, without any of these supporting mods, your turbos would start to make noise, whine, blow smoke, oil, and I would say probably 3 or 4 years after the release of the N54, so now let's fast forward to like 2010, 2011, we have upgraded turbochargers, clutch kits, port injection kits, fueling systems.
Yeah, basically a lot of stuff came out at that point, I would say. That was still before I basically got into the BMW platform. I was still on my Volkswagen Audi platform then. But yeah, I would say that marking point of 2012 to probably like 2016 was really the hot spot for the M54 platform. Maybe even 2017 because we were still in it heavily at that point. But yeah, they were marketing the shit out of N54 products.
Yeah, a lot of these companies were quick to market, to the aftermarket industry with go fast parts, intercoolers, charge pipes. God knows VRSF made a killing off these parts. Yeah. Down pipes, charge pipes, front mounts, and
charge pipes with the blow off valve options.
Correct. Yeah. So here's the issue. These vehicles at that time, 2010, 2011, they started to come down in price. And I know we joke a lot, but they were known as the Honda Civic of the BMW world.
Which is what I was literally going, you literally read my mind. At least when I was younger and like we were like starting to drive and whatnot, the Honda Civics, especially like we call them the bubbles or like the hatchbacks, were really popular, and they were like the inexpensive vehicle that you got to do a lot of modifications to, right? So I'm sure a lot of you guys in the, or girls and guys in the car community could agree with that. But I feel like as time went on, especially like 2012 to 2017, 2018, a lot of these younger kids were getting these 335s or 328s, mostly 335s with the N54s in them. And that was like the Honda Civic of that generation. And it's just mind-boggling to me that these 18, 19, 20-year-olds are driving BMWs and dumping stupid amount of money into them.
Well, it's not the fact that they were able to afford them at that age.
Oh, no. Because they never maintained them.
My bigger concern was the amount of power that these guys were making at, for the younger crowd, the younger generation of kids out there that drove these cars. You're talking about a couple $1,000 in bolt-ons and you're making 500, 600 horsepower.
Which is crazy.
Which is crazy to think, and that's a lot of power for any 17-year-old to have.
Who just started driving too.
Correct. Yeah. So now the issue is a couple years in, and we start to see a lot of the failures on these vehicles, and it's just the way the cookie crumbled on this particular chassis. It fell into the hands of the wrong demographic.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, for every one dude you had out there or one girl you had out there that wanted to spend the money and do it the right way, you had another 9 guys and gals out there who just wanted to pay for the performance parts, and they wanted to skimp out on the maintenance stuff.
To look cool. Like that was the shittiest part of it all. They just wanted to look cool, to say they had a BMW that had X, Y, and Z modifications done to it. But in reality is, you're not checking for leaks. You're not checking your oil pan. You're not checking to see if the turbos are leaking. You're not checking anything. And that's the
she's not wrong. And there was also a small subset of people out there that were also trying to basically paint that 335 as a competitor against the E90 M3
Which you
with the
can't.
V8, which, I mean, they were faster once,
Great, but
once you made a certain amount of power, that thing would technically,
right.
Whether it's drag racing or track racing, road racing, you're way faster, but it's still apples to oranges.
I mean, in my opinion, I think you can't compare the two. I don't know about you, but
well, no, you can't. You can't compare.
The E90 M3 is like a beast in its own, and I think there's nothing, in my personal opinion, and I drive a brand new G80, nothing compares to that vehicle. Well, and we own one, so I can't even say that. Like, I don't know what it's like. I do know
it's not that I disagree with you, but again, G80 to.
I'm not even saying even if okay, let's go E chassis, F chassis, G chassis. What can you compare it to? Nothing.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I mean, power wise, obviously the power is lacking.
In
right?
What the S65?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's no torque in that thing.
There's no power to it. But if you look at it from everything else, okay, yeah, you got to change your throttle actuators. You got to make sure your rod bearings are done after X amount of miles every so often. But really, those are the only two things that you've really got to worry about compared to the M54 or even M55, S55 platform, right? So it's like M54, yeah, you have rod bearings that spin, but you get the turbochargers that are leaking. Oil pans leak like fucking crazy on these vehicles. I feel like every single one that we've seen always has an oil pan that's leaking. And it's like insane to me because it's like, again, spending all this money on modifications, but why not put in the same amount of time and effort to check your maintenance that basically keeps the car going,
So what would happen is you would run into a situation where, you have, a well-built N54, and those turbocharger kits were not cheap, whether it was Pure or Rob Beck. God, what was the name of the company that started with X? H. There was a company that started with H. Hexagon.
You're
Chinese,
throwing me for a loop here because I don't remember.
When you see the logo, you know what I'm talking about. There were some Chinese.
I remember Rob Beck,
turbos,
Vargas, Pure, and there is another company, but I don't remember it being an X.
No, H, Hexon.
Oh no, I don't remember that one.
So then I want to say 2015, Doc Race came out with a single turbo kit.
Shout out to Doc Race.
And that was a wrap at that point. That's when these guys started, that's when we entered the whole, let's build an engine for an N54. So now that we've established the fact that these vehicles were very finicky maintenance-wise, the PCVs would fail. They would literally choke your turbos. You'd fry the turbos from a fried PCV. You had customers who wanted to do, let's upgrade the turbos, but let's not replace the oil drains. So when you don't do your oil changes, guys, what happens is the oil gets cooked, it gets baked, and it's going to clog your oil return back into your block, which is not good. And you'll end up actually choking your center section in your turbo. You pop your turbos. And those stock turbos were expensive. They were like, at the time, a couple of years, you were looking at between $900 to $1,300. 15. Cheap as 9, as expensive as $1,500 per turbo.
Yeah.
And then an install kit that costs another $500, and then you have to drop the subframe to replace the turbos. And then there's other maintenance you have to do, right? So these vehicles were cheaper, so they were targeted to a larger demographic of people who bought them, modified them, didn't want to do the maintenance. And when it came time to do the upgraded aftermarket parts and make the car faster, it's called, we already have your subframe down. Oh, I don't want to do the oil pan gasket.
Why?
That
shit drives me insane. Like, we see it like literally leaking so bad, and you're like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't have the money to do this. Okay, so then why the fuck are you spending money to put turbos in? Why the fuck are you spending money to put all these?
Because they want to go fast.
Woo! You're gonna go so fast. Are you going on the track too? Or are you just gonna like do a little roll racing on the streets and fucking do some stupid shit, which is so bad. But anyway.
So let's talk about these N54 fuel injectors, or rather the fuel system. So like I said, BMW, this was a learning curve. And we'll get to this later in the podcast, but without the N54, you wouldn't have the N55, you wouldn't have the S55, and then we wouldn't have gotten the B58, and then subsequently the S58. So the high-pressure fuel pump is a mechanical fuel pump that's going to take about, 70 PSI from your low-pressure pump, and then up at the high pressure, it's going to push that over to, at cold start, you need 1,000 psi, and you can maintain rail pressure thousands more because you have 6 individual high pressure fuel injectors. Now, BMW had 12 revisions on these fuel injectors. All right. So now at the end of this fuel injector, you're going to see a dash and a number, -3, -4, -5, ultimately ending with 12 revisions, index 12 injectors. Now, BMW twin turbo, there are 4 oxygen sensors. That means that you have an upstream and a downstream for each bank. Yep. So bank 1 has an upstream and a downstream, bank 2, upstream and downstream. Now, that means your DME, also known as your car computer, the vehicle's heart, the vehicle's brain, is going to adjust your air to fuel independently of bank 1 and 2, right? So if you have an index 3 on, let's just say cylinder 2, and you have an index 8 on cylinder 3, you cannot proceed with installing that said injector. You need to have a matching index for each bank, right? And now, as the cars got older, we'd seen some cars come in the shop and they'd have in bank 1 would be index 12s and bank 2 would be index 1, right? So 1, 1, 1. Yeah. And they'd be like, oh, can we go grab some 2s I found on eBay? Absolutely not. You don't want to have such a large discrepancy between, index 2s and index 12s. It's just not going to work, right? So at a certain point, we were selling a set of 6 injectors for what, $8.99?
Dirt cheap. Fucking dirt cheap. This was like 2018. 2018. We started pounding out the fucking N54 index 12 fuel injector sets. So you could get 6 fuel injectors with 6 decouplers because obviously you need the decouplers as well. Excuse me. For like $8.99, maybe like $8.50, $8.99. And it was insane because now if you look at it, each fucking injector,
$4,000.
Each fucking injector is $500 or $600 or something like that. I think last I checked, don't hold me to that, but for a set of 6 with 6 decouplers, $4,000. What?
So the OEM was Continental VDO, and I believe they are no longer the OEM. Mm-hmm. And now the manufacturer on those injectors is a company called Vitesco, Vitesco. And funny enough, we're doing this podcast. I got a call from 3 days ago, 4 days ago, maybe 2 days ago. And it was someone who asked if we still honor our lifetime warranty from 2018. And yes, we do. For all the haters out there, yes, we do honor the warranty in the fuel injectors. But if you bought it as a kit from us in 2018, our policy states we need to have the injector sent back as a full kit.
Yep.
You cannot send back just one injector. We need all 6 injectors. We need the 60 couplers. And we need, as per our policy from inception, the original packaging.
Meaning the boxes that each injector come in, plus the bag that the decouplers come in.
And if you don't have those items,
access denied.
As Elyse said, the warranty claim will be denied and we will not honor the warranty, okay? If you go to a company or a business or like a restaurant and there's an offer or a discount or a deal, you're going to be bound to the terms Correct. Of the policies for that company. And if you didn't like the policies at the time of the purchase, then maybe you shouldn't have made the purchase and you should have bought the injectors elsewhere, plain and simple.
Snooze, you lose.
Anyway, this customer was actually really understanding and he goes, I bought them from you. The car's been great. However, I have one laggy injector. Can I send one back? No. Okay, I understand. He paid $8.99 for a set of 6. Wait for this. Genuine BMW. They weren't even Contis. No videos. Genuine BMW set of 6, $8.99.
BMW, what are you doing?
So
crazy.
I said, listen, let me see the best I can do in a Vitesco unit, and maybe, I'll just bottom out for you and just sell it for a couple bucks over cost plus shipping because he was so understanding, right? This is someone who wasn't arguing with me over our own policies, trying to make up his own policies and procedures, thinking because the customer is always right. No. We have to put a stop to that. There are rules. There's policies and procedures that need to be followed. So this dude was super cool. And he's like, even if I send you back the original set of 6, I'm going to have to come out of pocket thousands of bucks.
Yeah, because basically our policy states whatever you paid for it, obviously minus the shipping, is what you'd receive in store credit. So since he paid let's call it $8.99, he didn't pay for shipping, just taxes. He would only receive that $8.99 back, which means he would have to order a new set of injectors for $3,100 plus tax.
Yeah,
or
no.
$3,099.
That's crazy. That's
which is insane.
Absolutely crazy.
Don't hold me to my math because I suck at math.
He was cool, and he was like, "All right, listen, let me know what you could do in the Vitescos, and let's see if we can formulate a plan to move forward and just replace one injector." I said, "Cool, I'll let you know." So, fuel injectors have been a problem on these N54 since day one. The high pressure fuel pumps had a massive recall. The National Highway Safety Transportation Administration, Jesus.
That's a mouthful.
I don't know why they exist. Hopefully Trump shuts them down. That sounds like a waste of taxpayers' money. But anyway, they got involved, and they basically issued recalls. I couldn't even tell you how many recalls, but these vehicles, you drive your N54 powered BMW, you go to pass a truck, fuel pump's dead, you lose virtually all power. Your throttle's gone. It's an actual safety issue. So then we had a couple of companies that came out with some pretty good, solid, low pressure side fueling solutions. It's like some nice Walboro dual 525s. Some companies that came out with some support for mechanical enhancements. That's all I'll say. Mechanical enhancements of the high pressure pump.
I know where you're going with that.
We'll touch on that in just a second here. So.
For a second, anyway. you caught me off guard, and I was so confused, but then put two and two together. A little slow.
Yeah, a little slow. So let's get back to, hold on here. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I'm still logged in. So N54, nightmares. It's just a problem child.
Then you have rod bearings.
No, the N54 never had a problem with the so yes.
They would, but obviously it was when it came into power.
The N54 bottom end is actually pretty strong. The issue comes into when you don't do the oil changes, and then when people started running ethanol,
true,
they would thin the oil out and not do their oil changes on time. The bottom end would just take a shit. But
I feel like we've seen a lot of spun rod bearings within the N54 platform.
I would say more on the N55.
True. N55, S55, 100% more. But yeah, I feel like we've gotten a lot of M54s with these, at least one spun rod bearing.
So back to making the power, right? And maintenance, right? Valve covers, PCVs. Luckily, the N54, the valve cover was independent of the PCV, so you could replace the PCV if you really wanted to. Oxygen sensors just never worked with the single turbo kits. They were way too close to your turbine housing, and you just kept frying these O2s.
And people used upgraded O2s. Don't forget that they would go with NTKs instead of the stock ones.
A company called ADV2, they would modify. I believe they modified the Bosch oxygen sensor, but yeah, NTK, a company called ADV. But you just kept frying, right? It's part of normal life for a single turbo N54. You just let the front O2 take a shit and you just replace it.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people have bought, O2s from us and lifetime warranted it, and they just NTK.
A lot.
Yeah.
Especially the NTK is 100%. Like we get them, like I'd probably say we get one every month, if not every other month. That's like, oh, I fried my oxygen sensor. Can I warranty it? And we'd be like, sure.
Maybe we should modify our policies and procedures, as that's not an OEM for that car.
Technically, it's not.
Bosch is, not NTK. So then we move on to you ready for this one? The front crank seal, guys. So your front crank seal would leak, and I know this is going to sound fucking crazy. Your serpentine belt will get sucked in through your front crank seal. That belt material will get caught up in your timing chain.
Been there, seen that.
Your timing chain will blow apart, and you're going to lodge that rubber in between your chain and your Vanos gear or your crank hub, and then you bend the valve and your engine is toast. If you catch it in time, you might be good, but then you got to drop the subframe, drop the oil pan, and pull apart everything just to be able. And at that point, you might as well do your guide rails, your timing chain, your oil pump sprocket, your grip disc, your Vanos solenoids. Your Vanos solenoids are very finicky in these N54s. If you have sludge or debris that gets built up from not doing your oil changes, that will start to give you issues with, properly regulating your camshaft, so to speak, your oil pressure. Not many issues with those actual Vanos hubs. Those actual the cam gears. Geez, the cam gears never had many issues in relation to the N52, where those bolts would back out that helped them fasten onto the camshaft. But what else do we have with the N54s? I would say crank hubs. Crank hubs were a problem, but luckily a couple companies were quick to market.
I feel like they weren't as heavily a problem as like the S55.
Well,
but they did become like they were finicky, but once people were upgrading them, once they started doing a lot more modifications to their vehicles, I think they were pretty solid. But yeah, I feel like the crank hub issue was definitely the S55.
Well, there's actually some science behind that. So these N54s by design, it's just the tuning, the hardware. You were never able to easily just do 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
And then on the N55 and the S55, by definition, those things were beefy. So you were able to just get much more torque down low. And, excuse me, that's when you would have an issue with your crank hub spinning. But a couple companies were, quick to market, keyed solutions and 2-pin, 4-pin. And then you have your crank bolt capture, which I guess it works in theory.
It's a personal preference, I feel like.
No, I mean, there's science behind it, but from an engineering standpoint, I'd rather go with a keyed crank hub.
Makes more sense.
And when your crank hub blows, then you have a real problem. So, yeah, the N54 is just, it's mostly, I wouldn't put all the blame on the actual engine itself, but more so on the demographic of people who own the vehicles.
I guess you're right. I guess it's a love-hate relationship, I feel like, and it's more hate than love. But I guess from there, we can switch over into the M55, S55 platform, which is also another one.
Yeah, but you know what? Before we get into that, we're going to go over, I guess, in this podcast, at least, with the quick evolution of N54 to N55 and S55. But before we hop on that, let's real quick talk about these two N54s. So...
Do we have to?
Yeah. Let's talk about them real quick. So we're not going to get too much into detail about that one behind Elyse because that one is not done yet. The engine is built. We do have an issue, presumably isolated so far, at least in relation to the head gasket. We need to take a look into it. But technically, it doesn't start and drive now because we halfway took it apart again. But let's talk about this black one behind me. So I'm going to pass it up to Elyse on the specs of the engine build because honestly, it's Sunday.
I'm also the one that knows more of the information because I sell a lot of the parts. So basically, the car behind Matt has oversized Manley pistons. They're 84.5. Manley rods. They went with the I-beam, not the H-beam, because the I-beams can handle more power. Upgraded head studs. They went with ARP's custom head stud kit, all 11 millimeter. Went with a Super Tech head gasket, which is also upgraded. ACL, extra oil clearance, rod bearings. And I think ACL, extra oil clearance, main bearings. I couldn't remember if they're ACL or King for the main, but I'm almost positive they're ACL with extra oil clearance. What else am I missing? We have rods, pistons, head gasket.
So the head gasket is Super Tech's. Super Tech.
No.
Yeah.
I know. I'm just trying to think of what else.
Yeah, Super Tech's. It's by Athena, the cut ring head gasket.
Yes, which we've spoken a lot about recently, all across our social media platforms between Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. I'm pretty sure that was really it. With the
X-clutch twin disc?
Yeah, it had. I mean, that came with the vehicle. So, what we ended up doing, the customer already had an X-clutch organic twin disc in the vehicle. With obviously it comes with the flywheel, but we replaced the friction discs in the clutch kit because those were completely comatose.
Yeah, someone had the genius idea to weld the bolts for the pressure plate to the actual clutch assembly, which was absolutely just mind blowing.
Oh, I forgot. Duh. Went with the jet fighter housing compressor cover on this build as well.
Oh yeah, so he had it's a 6266 pure precision turbo 6266 ball bearing.
Yes.
And we upgraded him to the T51, the jet fighter,
which is what precision calls it.
That's a Gen 2 ball bearing, right?
Yeah. Yes. So sorry, also forgot to state, both of these vehicles are single turboed. So yes, this one ended up getting a new compressor housing cover because customer had the old housing cover and he wanted to go jet fighter, which is completely fine. Personal preference again. New axles in the front because, like we mentioned, it is all-wheel drive. So 2 new axles in the front. I think that's about it.
Yeah. So the manifold on the black one you see behind me is unknown. We don't know what manifold it is. It's dangerously close to a dock race manifold. The wastegate placement is absolute garbage on it. Where the outlet on the turbo compressor had to be modified to actually clear the wastegates, which we got done, and I'll clip in a pic of that. So, what'd you forget?
Block.
Oh yeah, so CSS did the block, so they did the bottom end. Stock head, it's got stock valve train components.
Yeah, we didn't go upgraded with the valve train.
I think we're forgetting something.
There's something on the top of my tongue, and I can't.
It's got a BMS port injection manifold kit.
That came already.
Yeah, what else is in there?
We flow tested the fuel injectors because, like Matt had mentioned, we noticed that there was index 1.
So the car came in with, it's supposed to have 6 index 12s, and it had 4 index 12s and 2 index 2s, so we had to get 2 brand new index 12s. We flow tested the other 4.
Pretty sure they were index 1s, not
index 1s. You're right. Yeah, and even then, we still had an issue with those other 2 fuel injectors in relation to the original 4. So we swapped those out for index 12s too, and now we're good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm missing anything else when it comes to engine-wise, but basically, block got done by CSS. The head went to Head Games. This was all done with the engine builder. We were just the ones that basically plucked the engine out.
Oh yeah, this is just us doing, removal and installation. So
we're just roll calling right now what's officially done to the vehicle.
So we got everything in the car, and we got a couple big problems that are going on. And the first biggest issue we ran into was fueling.
And this car is also running E85 or E50 mix.
Yeah. So oddly enough, while we were under the car, Nassim and I were under the car, and someone decided to put, again, not us, the car came to us like this, guys. So someone decided to put a Amazon Evil Energy fuel filter inline right below the slave cylinder, which is, generally speaking, the area where you want that inline fuel filter. You don't put a $20 fuel filter in a build that you're almost at $20,000. You just don't do that.
Well, this current build is probably at $20,000, not the previous 3 other builds that he's done.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is you just don't put an Evil Energy fuel filter in.
You're spending the money, might as well put in the correct part.
Radium or something in. So
and radium is really not even that much more expensive if you think about it. Call it what? 30, 40 more bucks than what you're buying one. And again, this is not the customer's fault. This is the previous shops that have done the work that didn't put in the correct parts.
So Nassim and I are into the car, just checking everything out, and unfortunately, it decided to leak. I got some gas in my eye. It was horrible.
It was a bad day.
It was a bad day. It was like 4:30. I'm ready to go home and drop a gas in my eye, and that burned. I've never felt, and I've done some stupid shit in my 20 years of doing this. I'm talking antifreeze, brake fluid, brake cleaner, trans fluid, power steering fluid.
Even when you grind stuff, you get
I get metal in my eye. I don't wear safety glasses. Never had a problem. And
hasn't worn safety glasses until he got gas in his eye. Now every time he's under the vehicle or around the vehicle, he wears safety glasses.
So I watched it. I look up, I see the drop of E hit my face, my eye, and it burned like absolute hell. That was horrible. I ran to the bathroom, to the eye wash station, which is also known as the sink. Sorry,
OSHA, don't come after us.
OSHA, stay far away from us. So
we've learned, okay? We've definitely learned that we need the eye wash station for cases like this.
So, I'm, not a doctor. I'm a mechanic. I'm on Google, gasoline in the eyes.
I'm calling eye doctor offices. Like, what do we do? They're like, take him to the emergency room. So Where do we go?
Now, mind you, I haven't eaten yet all day, and I had a nice bag of McDonald's on the desk. This is 2024, right? So this is Fat Matt. We're on a diet now. And Nassim was like, "Go to the hospital, dude. Go to the hospital." And I'm like, "Nassim, can I have my burger and fries, dude? Like,
can I have my double cheeseburgers?
I'm sitting there like this, right? And I'm just trying to eat my burger because I'm starving. Like, I'm not gonna die. Worst case, I go blind in one eye, but I'm not gonna die from gasoline in my eye.
And in my head, I'm like, we need to flush this shit out like ASAP, right? So I'm saying like we need to go, like bring the food in the car with you. Like I will drive you to the emergency room. Like we just need to go to make sure, like the longer you leave it in, the worse it could get. So I was like, let's go. Everything just led to bringing him to the emergency room. So,
but before we got to that point, again, I'm sitting there literally eating a cold hamburger and cold French fries because I'm starving.
Facts.
Like if you go to the ER, it's going to be like possibly.
Get your facts straight. It was 2 double cheeseburgers, okay?
I'm fat.
2 double cheeseburgers.
I'm fat. So anyway, I'm just trying to eat my burgers, and Nassim keeps asking me, "Dude, you good?" And I'm like, "Nah, I'm good. Go to the hospital." I'm like, "I will." 30 seconds later, "Yo, Matt, you need to go to the hospital, dude. Like,
it was just like a panicky moment.
I'll lock it up here.
Yeah.
Just go to the ER, Elyse. You go take him." And finally, I slammed the fucking empty McDonald's bag down. I go, "Nassim, shut the fuck up. Can I eat my fucking dinner and I'll go to the fucking hospital?"
The whole ordeal from moment of gasoline entering Matt's eye until we left, which is a whole ordeal. I guess this is another reason why I just the N54 platform is just cursed for us.
And I think I've yelled at Nassim like twice in my whole life, right? And over some stupid shit, and he just sits there and he's smirking at me, right? He's smirking. And
it's like calling him a fucking idiot.
I said to him, "Shut the fuck up. Let me eat my food, and then I'll go to the hospital. Does that work? Is that okay? Do I have permission to finish my dinner?" And he's like, "Dude, it's your eye. You don't want to fuck around." I'm like, "I know, Nassim." So yeah, we go to the hospital. In and out like 45 minutes.
Yeah, we got lucky.
So guys, here's the trick to life. You go to the ER. You tell them you think you got shot.
No, don't do that.
So the pain's 10 out of 10.
We're off track here, okay? We're off track. Let's get back on track, okay?
All right, so go to the hospital, and they check me out. They give me some eye drops, some ointments. They said, "You're good to be fine." They bought a big machine. They said, "Go home. You'll be good. Wear safety glasses." So let's focus back in on the fueling issue we had over the past 2 weeks since that happened. So we had an issue where we had no rail pressure. We had no rail pressure. The car would start. It was pulling timing. It was running like absolute shit.
It would bang like a motherfucker.
And,
popping in here.
It was pulling timing bad. So now we investigate, and the investigation leads us to no codes. There's no trouble codes in the car, which is never a good thing from a mechanic's perspective. This means you there's something fishy going on. Whether it's a phantom issue, but now we got to break out voltmeters, our oscilloscope.
Got to put your doctor hat on.
Yeah, put our doctor hat on now. Really try to figure out what's going on. Guys, trouble codes and scan tools are cheats, right? Those are cheat sheets. That just helps guys or helps mechanics find the problem. And, the newer software will guide you through every single step, tell you the colors of the wires, the pin location, the connector location, what the voltage should be. It's super easy. This stuff is not that hard. But when you have no trouble codes, it's not fun. So now we moved on to isolating a bunch of components and circuits in the car, triple checked the low pressure pumps, which come to find out the low pressure pumps were never a problem, but it was actually installed backwards. Not by us. We had to correct that. But we came up to the low pressure side and everything checks out. So at this point, it's like, what's going on in this car? Why don't we have high pressure reading on the rail side? So there's 2 sensors. You have your low pressure fuel sensor, which was replaced. We have our high pressure fuel sensor, right? So your low pressure is going to read your low pressure. Your high pressure is going to read your high pressure right before it gets fed into your high pressure fuel injectors. And the car would turn on, it would run like absolute shit, and then it would die in about 5 seconds. And we never were able to get above 100 PSI, which is not good. At idle on a cold start, key on, you should see 100, 200, 300 PSI. You turn it on, it's idling, you should have, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 PSI. And that's on a cold start at idle. And then you work your way up to 1,500, 1,800, 2,000 PSI. So during our digging, we found one of the wires on the high pressure sensor was frayed, which would lead to the exact issue we're having. So we basically jumped, we got a replacement connector for the high pressure rail, and we basically jumped that one signal wire from the DME all the way to the high pressure sensor. Now, unfortunately, when we opened up the DME, we found oil all over the subconnectors. Our release clips for the DME were gone, which is not good. So now it's a rat's nest in there. The reflex was wired in with electrical tape, which you're never supposed to use.
So it was like a backyard mechanic job.
Anyway, corrected that issue, and now the car starts, and I have a high pressure reading at idle that's oscillating now. It's going between 300, 1800, 250, 1600. It's oscillating, which is not good. So at this point, I'm ready to give up. Truthfully, this is one of these cars that really kicked my ass. 3 days nonstop trying to find the solution. And to preface all of this, by the way, we may have jumped around so much, I forgot to mention the high pressure pump was no good. So we're working with a brand new high pressure fuel pump. That's highly unlikely. It's plausible, but highly unlikely that the high pressure pump is no good. So we got a brand spanking new high pressure fuel pump. We have 6 brand new index 12 fuel injectors. We now fixed the issue with our sensor from the high pressure rail. So for you guys out there that don't know how the system works, you have your low pressure. We have 80 psi coming in the low. High pressure pump is supposed to multiply that. Your high pressure fuel pump has what they call a quantity control valve, QCV. Quantity control valve is one of the only electrical components, valve solenoid, in the high pressure fuel pump. And what happens is that runs to your DME and works in tandem based off your low pressure fuel sensor and your high pressure on the rail. So if the DME sees an issue with the high pressure sensor output from the actual sensor in the rail, what the DME will do will tell the QCV, the quality control valve, no, you're not going to allow the flow of gas to come into this high pressure pump to make the pressure that we need to have this car idle and stay on. So at this point, I'm thinking maybe there's a possibility that the high pressure pump is no good. But again, I highly doubt it. So we decided to remove the mechanical enhancement to the high pressure fuel pump. That's all I'm going to say.
We're going to leave it out because we do deal with a lot with this company, and not saying it was a bad part on their behalf. It could have just been something that went bad or something was not correctly installed. We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns within this unfortunate cycle. I don't know what you want to call it, because
I think what you're trying to say is there's a real possibility that the previous hands that touched this car may have damaged that mechanical enhancement. And I'm definitely not throwing shade at the company that makes the part. It's very possible that it failed due to an install error. We just don't know, right? Because this part came in as a used part, so to speak, that was already installed on the car.
Yeah.
So with that being said,
and it's not a cheap part either.
No.
It's not at all.
Not cheap. So we took this part out, and at the same time, when I had the high pressure fuel pump out and the mechanical enhancement to the pump out, I was checking the vacuum pump. You just
Chasing
don't know
your tail,
right? Because that high pressure pump is spun off that vacuum pump. So
I'm sure you guys could put two and two together, but
put everything back together, and guess what? The car works. We have 2,300 psi at idle now, constant, and the car is good. So
that was my snaps to you.
So now,
car runs.
Yeah, the car runs. We still have a way to go. We have to fix the rat's nest and the DME. There's just so much we still have to do.
There's so much stuff. Like, for instance, customer came in with a IRP. Is it
IRP?
Shifter, reverse button, reverse was not working because they never hooked it up properly. Don't know what they did. So, like, that's another thing that we have to fix. Customer's having an issue with his fuel tank where he's not able to, like, properly fuel his car. It keeps cutting off on him, which it's kind of like a known problem. But like we just want to take a look at that. One of the things we looked at before, like we even sent the car, because once we removed the engine from the vehicle, we sent the car back to his house so it just wouldn't sit here. So it sat at his house. Before we like removed it from our facilities, we adjusted all 4 corners of suspension because they were out of whack. And I think Nassim said one of the, I don't know if it was the front or the rear was
one of the springs was installed upside down. Wow.
What the fuck?
So we still have a lot to go in this N54. And huge shout out to the customer for being super patient. This is the 4th time he's doing this now. The first time with us,
hopefully 4th and last.
Well, that's the plan.
Yeah,
but again,
4th and last.
We do things differently.
Yeah.
And he's been super understanding and patient and letting us do what we need to do, to figure it out. And we will. For every problem, there's always a solution. It's just,
we want to cross all our...
part of the journey of getting to that solution that sometimes is just not fun.
Dotting all our I's and crossing all our T's is what we like to do.
And it also comes down to, the more we go into this car, the more we find.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like I made a joke with the customer. It's like, when do we pull the plug? When do I say, oh, I got to take your rear quarter panel off? It's it's unfucking believable what we've found. So
it's definitely not for the weak. But I think we've spoken enough about our likes and our not even likes, because we don't really like much about the N54.
Well, it's because of, what we've seen and what we've been through, so I think that's actually part of the reason why we took on these 2 N54s was, I guess you can say a little bit of personal reasons to be able to say, it can be done and show people it can be done, but
prove people wrong.
Both of these owners, both of these dudes, they're going to spend whatever needs to be spent and time, right?
Yeah.
While they do want the cars back at the same time, when it's correlated as far as, listen, I need at least 2 weeks, 4 days, 13 days, whatever that time is, I need the time to properly fix this problem and get this car 100%, and they're understanding. So
our plan for these 2 vehicles, hopefully, fingers crossed, everything checks out. Like I said, we want to dot all our I's, cross all our T's. They hopefully will be with us this coming season, roll racing. At least roll racing.
That's the plan.
Yeah. I don't know about drag racing with these guys, but 100% roll racing. So definitely stay tuned for that. But
so I don't know if we told you, this one is a closed deck. The gray one you see behind Elyse is an open deck, right? So one is going to be substantially less in power output, which the customer's aware of.
Yeah, he doesn't really want the power. He just
maybe
wants...
get 1,000 out of this one would be cool, and then
probably maxing 7-ish on this one.
Yeah, depending on what turbo we ultimately end up going with this one. This guy's been through so much hell with this car. On a 62, it won't make 1,000, but around 800 is realistic. And then if he likes it, we already know he'll call us and be like, here's your credit card, let's go with a bigger turbo.
We're trying to get both of these guys because they've been through so much, just through the clear, basically. And then once they're through the clear, let them enjoy the vehicles. Hopefully they last a long while. Obviously, besides stupid maintenance things that obviously we need to get done. But we just want them to enjoy the car, feel the power of the car, and take it for a couple track events.
So the IRP, real quick, that Elyse talked about on this car, the actual shifter assembly, the reverse lockout broke. The cable snapped off.
I think it just wasn't installed.
Well, that's why it broke. But I'm also not a fan of how IRP actually fastens that reverse lockout cable to the actual shifter assembly. There's a better way to do it, and for what they're charging. But I'm not throwing shade at IRP.
We deal with a lot of better. I'm not that we won't deal with them again. We just deal with a lot better brands. For instance, if you're looking for short shifter, Rogue Engineering.
Yeah, but
there's another brand, and
it's completely different because Rogue doesn't have an option for a CAE or an IRP style for this car.
What's the other brand that we
RTD.
There we go. Sorry, RTD. Couldn't. It just wasn't coming. They're really great.
So this one we had to. How do I say this nicely? No one tells you this, right? Until you get to the mechanic shop.
What?
You want to properly install the IRP shifter, you have to pull apart the center console. End of story. You have to pull apart the center console. That's the only way to properly install this shifter.
Yeah.
You can get away with fucking around and peeling up the carpet around the actual tunnel where, that rod's going to drop into, but the right way to do it is to take apart the center console like we had to get this far back enough to
figure
clear
out
the
where
aftermarket head
fitment
unit.
is going to be, yeah.
You know, because this has an aftermarket head unit, so your
both.
first, your third, your fifth, even your reverse is just, it's too close. It's
but his head unit also is his gauges, so that's why he really
the Android MH2. Yeah. Well, listen, there's no reason to say you can't run this. It's just now we have to remove this.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we probably should have done before we completely bolted it down. But thank God it's not super difficult. It's just a pain in the ass when it comes to
taking the center console out.
Yeah, removing the center console. But yeah, so be interesting to see once both of these cars are completely 100% on the road, see what they handle. But
so the last thing that I want to talk about is the great part about having your own podcast. You can go to the bathroom whenever you want. So before I take a bathroom break real quick and pass it off to you to do the intro to the last part of the podcast, I want to talk about the N54 and the ARP head studs, right? So we sell a lot of these ARP head studs.
And they're custom, just so you know. They're not, like, these are not off the shelf. These are 100% custom.
We have phone calls. What's the torque spec? Ask your engine builder. Brad, my engine builder is my gas station attendant. Yeah, he rents.
He works out of his house.
And, out here in Kentucky. I'm like, yeah, bro, you don't want that dude fixing your car. You don't want him building an engine. So the big problem with the N54s, and I've seen this happen a couple times, you need to obviously drill your block for the larger studs.
Yeah, because the kit comes...
Your 9 and 11s or...
Right, that's the standard kit. Or if you go all 11s, you're going to have to drill them out. But yeah, the 4 11s that come in the standard kit, you have to drill them out. Obviously, be larger.
I've seen this happen a couple times. And this is not necessarily due to a machine shop's inability or a repair facility's inability, but they go to drill the block toward the back, so the bell housing area, the back of the block, and they drill it. They drop their 11 millimeter stud in, or time cert it. They put the car all together, get the engine back in, and they have a coolant leak that they can't find where it's coming from. You know where it's leaking from?
Head studs.
No. Well, yes.
Head gasket.
Yes. No. Yes, but no. Do you know why it's leaking?
Because they didn't drill them properly.
They technically did.
So then why?
When they went to drill for that stud, the block cracked.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a water
We've
jacket
seen that
right
too.
there.
I forgot about that.
And the block fucking cracks.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. That's crazy. I had the one guy try to argue it's an ARP. I'm like, it's not an ARP problem, bro. This is an N54 problem, man. I don't know what to fucking tell you. Yeah, Especially the one guy was like, do I have to pull the engine back out? I said, yeah. What?
Duh.
No. You got a JB Weldon in the car, dude? Well, yeah, you got to pull it out. So, yeah, just food for thought on these N54 guys. And this is actually the exact reason why we won't build an N54. We can't source good cores. Yeah. All of these cores have been beaten and abused. They've been raped. They're horrible condition. And it's not worth our time to put them together.
Yeah.
So we have a builder out in PA who I think he has a garage full of N54s, or he knows the go-to place, and he just has access to good cores that we don't. So N54, no, we won't. We just won't build it. It's just not worth the headache or the frustration. So
nor an N55, we won't really touch them either.
It depends if it's low mileage, but yeah, you're right. It's just a bigger brother to the N54. So with that being said, I'm gonna hit to head for a quick bathroom break.
Hurry back.
And I'll have Elyse do the intro on the next stuff, which she kind of just mentioned.
So, like I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, or not really the beginning, but M54, M55, S55. We just have I don't want to say there's a bad connotation to them. It's just we just try to kind of steer clear of them. But yeah, most of the time we will definitely not touch an N55 because of the issues from the N54. And yes, even though they're not the same vehicle or the same engine, they're relatively similar. Not to talk any shit about an N55 because I owned one. I had a 2013 535, loved her. She was so beautiful, so comfortable, but it was my daily driver. I didn't put any single sort of modification to it. So if there's no modification to the vehicle, great. no issues. But once you start doing all these modifications like we spoke about with the N54, it's the same thing with the N55. You run into all these issues, and people are not trying to maintain their vehicle like they're supposed to, and checking for leaks, checking their oil, like doing oil changes regularly every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. Yes, 3 is on the lower side, but depending on how much you drive and how many miles you put on the car every year, you do want to be more consistent with it. Case in point, my G80, I literally do an oil change every 5,000 miles, if not maybe even before 5,000 miles, just to be consistent. Because yes, I use and abuse the vehicle. It does have modifications, even though they're not anything crazy. It's still a modification done to the vehicle. So to prevent anything from happening, I do my oil changes regularly. But a lot of these vehicles and these consumers don't regularly maintain their vehicles, so they're not doing the oil changes. They're not checking fluids. They're just being used and abused, which is completely fine. You're allowed to do whatever the fuck you want to do to your vehicle, but don't complain when your vehicle takes a shit on you. So yeah, N54, fine. N55, another one. But the biggest problem I have is when people try to tell me that the S55 is the greatest of all vehicles, or engines, I should say.
What did I miss? What did I miss? I'm back.
Just talking shit, basically, my opinion about the N55, S55. So basically, my opinion, S55 is a S55. How should I put this? That S55 is a glorified N55, or other way around, right?
So you're not wrong. The N55 it's a big upgrade over the N54, right? So you have 3 liters of displacement. You have an inline 6. They went from twin turbo to single turbo.
Yeah.
The earlier versions had a pneumatic wastegate. Then
they're really similar to the N54. They're just a few things that are different to the N54.
Well, more than a few, I would say.
I'm being dramatic when I
turbochargers went from twin to single, and then the earlier N55s had pneumatic wastegates and electronic wastegates. I think the way you want to look at this is as far as relation N55 to S55. So the S55 debuted with the F8X M3 M4, right? So your F80, F82,
and
F83. And M2, you're right.
Yeah.
So, but that didn't happen until 2019.
Correct. And they were only 2 years.
2014 is when the M3, M4 was released.
Right.
And a lot of folks don't seem to
I thought it was 2015.
The fall of 2014.
Oh, but year make was 2015.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
They released
production,
it, right? BMW had it in, they had test cars out in 2013.
Yeah.
Right? The S55 has been in development for a while at that point. But the S55 debuted in the F8X, and the M3, I remember seeing the Austin yellow. That's a beautiful car.
Right? I hated that color.
I'm just talking about the car in general, though, right? So Yas Marina and Austin yellow were the launch colors for those cars.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I fell in love with, for the first time, a 4-door. I'm like, the F80, just those wide hips. It looked better than the F82. And I was always a coupe guy. I always loved the E92s over E90.
I agree.
Now, here is the problem with what I learned over the years in relation to what BMW was doing at this point, right? Because you got to remember, guys, BMW stopped really innovating a long time ago, and everything's modular. So, yeah, we love the S58. It is bulletproof. It makes a lot of power, but it's still modular. The S85 and the S65, the S62, the S54, the S50, the S52, these were all engines, right? Albeit cast iron, at least for the S50, S52, S54. But these engines were designed with innovation, okay? So they were purpose-built. I mean, Jesus Christ, the V10, right? Which no manufacturer dare ever try to produce now with the EPA. You can't bring a V10 to market with where we're going now with electric. That little German guy that walks into the meeting goes, let's bring back the V10, you're fired.
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago, give this man a raise, right? 5-liter V10, one of the best sounding BMWs ever made. So the S55 borrowed a large majority of parts from the N55. And, a lot of folks don't seem to get it. It's marketing, guys. It's marketing bullshit. From a mechanical standpoint, with my experience, and an engineering standpoint, my experience is like, well, hold on a second. you want to come in here and charge 6 figures for a car that doesn't have any innovation. It looks cool. It's a beautiful looking car. But wait, what? You borrowed 50% of the parts from an N55? And you changed,
and then you still have issues
around.
too.
Yeah, you do with the crank hub. But
not only that, but you have the eccentric shaft that has issues on the N55.
And the S55.
And the S55.
And the S55, yeah. So
which, if you don't know, the N55, S55, that's one of like the major issues with that eccentric shaft.
So, well, we'll get to the shaft issues in a second. So the S55 borrowed the ignition coils, design on the cylinder head. They're almost interchangeable. The N55 and S55 heads are literally almost interchangeable. And don't hold me to this, I could be wrong. There's a guy out in Arizona, California. 4N, Mike,
Cali.
Awesome guy. He bought rosin pistons from us a couple years ago. He is doing that's innovation. He's doing some stroker kits, but not the stroker kits that you're used to.
Yeah.
He's de-stroking them. So he's going from 3 liters to 2.5, revving out to 9,000 RPM, and they sound absolutely amazing. Purpose built. So there is a purpose for a de-stroked N55 or S55. But with that being said, I want to say he used the N55 head and an S55 or vice versa, but the cylinder heads are damn near identical. So you want 6 figures for a car that has no real innovation. Now, BMW did the same thing with the S58. All right. They carried a lot of the it is a B58. The S58 is a B58.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
All right. So it's twin turbo from single. But anyway, let's not get to that just yet. The S55 is a problem child because, in my opinion, they borrowed a lot of these parts from the N55, right? Just go get an M235 or an M2 N55. You could do the same thing you could do in an S55.
Well, I mean, the M2 also came comp, non-comp, which M55 or S55. If you got the comp, you got the S55. If you got non-comp, it was an N55.
But I want to say there was a couple years where the M2 was released in 2016, I believe, with the N55. The F87 debuted with the N55.
Yeah, it was always.
You had a good 3 years. You were only able to get an N55. You couldn't get an S55 until 2019. So with that being said, the S55 has a 2-piece crank hub from the factory. And I've done enough videos here, guys, to show you what happens with the crank hub.
And if you haven't seen, go check it out at Z&M Performance on our Instagram.
Yes.
Or on YouTube.
So the 2-piece crank hub utilizes your oil sprocket on your crankshaft. And it has a sintered disc, a diamond sintered disc that's going to help sandwich that to your crankshaft. And when they go out of sync, they spin. It's called a spun crank hub. So you're going to have one part of that hub that's going to spin independently of the other part, which is not good. You want that sprocket to spin with the rest of the crank at the same exact speed, because when they don't, you're going to bend some valves and you're going to have a nightmare, and most likely you're going to tank your engine. So a lot of companies came out with upgraded crank hubs, 2-piece, 4-piece, keyed, all that fun stuff.
You mean 2-pin, 4-pin?
Sorry, 2-pin, 4-pin. No,
there is a 2-piece crank hub and a 1-piece crank hub. Yes,
has the 1-piece.
Yes, yes, right? But you meant 2-pin and 4-pin. I knew what you meant.
The big problem with the Gintani crank hub, nothing to do with what Gintani did with it, or Maximum PSI back in the day had their 1-piece crank hub. It was the install. A lot of these shops were not ready to do the installs. You have to drill the crankshaft, guys.
Yeah.
You need to take an actual rotary drill with the supply drill bit and drill the crankshaft. We had guys doing this shit in their driveways. We had these oil lube shops, these Jiffy Lube shops, these bunk shops.
Slanted.
It's just, you can't, that's not how you are supposed to do that job, right? You should, and then you have some guys who are leaving the subframe up. And they're using grease and rags to catch the debris from when you drill it. No.
So we call backyard mechanic,
baby.
That's
not the way to do it. Now, I take it back. I mean, listen, it can be done. I'm not throwing shit at shops out there that leave the bumper on, right? I can leave the bumper on. I'm good enough to leave the bumper on. I don't have to take it off. Why do I take it off? I want perfection. I don't want any possibility.
Also makes life easier.
I don't want any possibility of something falling off the bumper and freaking me out with the drill. And then, no, I take the bumper off, pull the subframe down. I will call out the shops that are not removing the subframes. You need to remove the subframe because you got to get the oil pan out. You can't take the oil pan out, the subframe's up.
Yeah.
How do you catch those metal shavings without removing
your oil
pan?
Realistically, you don't.
You don't. And then that material will get stuck in your lubrication system. It'll get picked up in your oil pump screen, and if it's small enough, it gets in your oil pump, and then you got a problem. And
You're fucked.
Yeah, you're fucked. So that's my gripe with the S55.
In my personal opinion, you're spending close to 6 figures on a brand new vehicle. You start doing these modifications to it because, let's be real, people who are buying these cars are going to modify them right away. Why do you need to spend close to, let's be realistic, crank hub, let's call it $1,200 for a crank hub, right?
Yeah.
And then from $1,200 just for the crank hub alone, then you need to pay for install, which realistically is what?
Well, I mean, you got shops out there doing the $22.99 specials.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not a bad price. It's just,
crazy.
It's hard to explain. But back to what I was saying about the install, great that Elyse brought it up. You don't want that crank up to be a cheap install, right? You don't go to a restaurant looking for a cheap steak and then call it a good steakhouse, right?
Yeah.
No, this isn't fucking Outback compared to Ruth Chris here. There is a difference, right? So when a shop goes, oh yeah, we'll do it for $16.50. What? You're not getting quality work. No. So
definitely gonna leave with your fucking crank hub fucking angled real bad, and then you're gonna realize that whether it's weak, you leaving the shop however long.
Well, also keep in mind that if you're gonna go in there and take out your factory crank hub and remove the bumper and drop your subframe, and you have 100,000 miles, you might as well do your guide rails.
Timing,
you might as well do your timing chain, your tensioner, your Vano solenoids, check valve. Just get it done. You're in there. Then you got your auxiliary water pump.
Change your valve cover gasket.
Valve cover gasket. Then you have your, well, you have to. You're going to pull off.
Oh, I'm saying
some folks don't.
People don't replace their valve cover gasket.
Oh, here's a quote for a crank hub. Why am I being charged for a valve cover gasket? Because we got to take your valve cover off, genius. And it'd be wise to replace it if you have 100K and you never did the valve cover gasket before.
But even think about, like, let's hypothetical, right? You take brand new, hypothetically speaking, M3, F80 M3 off the lot. You start doing downpipes, charge pipes, start playing with it, modifying it. That's a lot of money if you think about it. You're dropping close to 6 figures, paying for a car that's close to 6 figures, and then on top of it, you're spending, let's call it 10K, right? Between the crank hub, labor, charge pipes, downpipes, tune, what am I missing?
Carbon fiber paddles.
Nobody cares about those. Aesthetically, I'm not talking about aesthetically. Suspension. Like, people do all this stupid shit, right? Let's be realistic.
People will drop 20 to 30K in building their S55.
Not even building it though, but like, you're doing all these stupid modifications. Sorry, they're not stupid modifications. They're simple mods. But think about it. Having to drop at least close to $4,000 to do a crank hub is insane to me. Like, you get a car, you shouldn't have to drop that much money to do a crank hub when it's relatively new.
I think you should send a letter to BMW and complain.
Yeah, I should, but I'm not going to because I don't have an F80 or a F8X, and I don't give a fuck because I think they're, excuse me, this is going to be real controversial. I think they're the worst M car that they've made.
Bold statement.
That is a very bold statement, but I think that they're just so cheaply made. The M2 personally makes me feel like I'm driving a golf cart. Or a go-kart.
You mean go-kart?
Golf cart, go-kart. It's the same thing. They're so small. But the M3, M4, to me, it doesn't feel... Again, I understand I'm coming from E90 E92 M3. And then I have the G80. I've just driven cars that have a great feel and a great body to them. And that car just felt so cheap for the price point.
Well,
and again, my personal opinion.
Bolt-ons in an F87, right? That the blue M2, and that thing was like a go-kart on cocaine.
And I felt scared because
that was like, oh, hey, here's some coke. You want to do some coke, and then just that.
You and your
coke. It's analogy, that car was coked up. That car was moving. That car was scary,
honestly,
though.
It just makes you feel like sketched out because we were testing and tuning the car,
and we did the local highways here on 287 North. For you guys that don't know, and by the way, we
shouldn't have ratted ourselves out.
1 o'clock in the morning, right? We're not doing this stuff in traffic like these young kids do.
But still,
we had to get a couple logs in, and it's just, hitting a turn on 287 North, closer to the New York State border, at 145 miles an hour. If you hit the slightest elevation change, the slightest bump, divot, groove, whatever you want to call it in the road.
The back end kicks out.
That entire chassis will move because it is so light and that wheelbase is so short. It's scary. If it's got to get set up, right?
Yeah.
So without the proper, it had KWV3s, and even then, it's just with a camber kit, but it wasn't dialed in for the street.
Just personally, to me, that platform was just not it. I'm glad we kind of brushed over and we didn't buy into it. I just don't think it was worth it.
And there was a time we almost pulled the trigger on an F80 M3.
I literally got in it.
Too much money though.
I got in it to drive it because at this point I don't think I had driven any sort of F8X M3 or M4 at the time, because this was before the M2 S55 M2, like, so the M2 comp came out. I was like, why am I looking at this vehicle? It was cheap. It made me feel like it was your standard 3 Series. Like, it did not feel like it was an M at all.
Well, no offense, the G80's no better.
The G80 feels a lot better than
the interior build quality is not the best.
No, I'm not saying it's like our M3.
What's the red in the G80? Fiona
Red.
Fiona red. That stuff is it's disgusting after 25,000 miles.
I mean, I also daily the shit out of it.
It doesn't matter though, because back in the day, they had to have changed their leather supplier.
Probably.
Fox red on the E90 M3s.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
The thing was bulletproof, man. Yeah. 50,000 miles.
Everything
like
has changed. Brand new.
I get it. We took care of it too.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Everything has changed. Times have changed. Manufacturers have changed. People like who we're using because of quality or because of, I wouldn't even say quality, because quality is not the same anymore.
Cost savings. That's all it's about now.
It's about they're trying to produce more, but make more at the same time. Like, pull more and more profit in their pockets.
They're trying to increase their bottom line, which I get, but at the same time, and no shade, we'll do another podcast on this where we're building hopefully the world's fastest, most powerful manual transmission S55.
Oh yeah. I thought we were talking about the 58 for a second.
It's like, but again, it's like the N54 customers. The customer is willing to do
whatever it takes,
right? So it's that mindset. And unfortunately, the S55 guys they're weird, man. I don't want to do a crank up, but I want to go spend $8,000 on turbos. What? Do the crank up. You got to do the crank up, right?
Again, don't take this the wrong way. Us talking about this is just talking because we are in the industry. We see it. I don't even want to say we feel it. We know what it's like. I just personally feel the S55 was it just wasn't worth it.
And in levels, right? And then naturally with inflation, the G chassis cars, the price went up, right? So at a certain point, you start to weed out that demographic of people who is going to want to cheap out on the maintenance.
Think about it. I mean, they started creating M cars for exclusivity, but now it's not really exclusive anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it used to be exclusive and it's not exclusive anymore. I feel like everyone and their mother has an M3, an M4, an M2, an M5.
I guess you could say
I feel like the only one that's not super popular is the M8. And who wants an M8? And no offense, who wants an M8? It's a fucking boat.
A lot of people do.
It's a fucking boat.
Yeah, well, some people like the M8.
It's huge.
But it comes down to personal preference. It's just unfortunately, the way the market is set up and the demographic in relation to ownership of the vehicles, when you have a large subset of people who want to cheap out on the maintenance and, because we are mechanics with an engineering background here, we understand the basics of making sure your maintenance is on point. Maintenance is key, guys. So it bothers us when you want to spend money and do performance upgrades and you don't want to take care of your oil leaks. So, with that being said, I'll give a real quick funny story before we close it out. And somehow we always end up with the cars that no one else can fix.
But we always fix them.
We had an F80 here, and it got pure turbos, the whole nine. The car no longer is alive. I think it got, I want to say it got wet, got flooded.
Oh,
yeah, Grigio Telesto. And we did the pure, everything went great. The install went smooth. We ran into some problems with
intakes.
Bank 1. Well, no, the intakes you knew about, but a Bank 1 misfire. And I was chasing this for 2 weeks straight. No codes. Well, aside from the codes for going lean, no codes. We even swapped out. When we had swapped out the cats, the codes went away but came back. So I thought it was a clogged cat. It wasn't a clogged cat because the codes came back. And I don't know why. I don't know why I ended up in this position with this F80. But I know for some reason, I know why. I had to take the transmission out. I had to take the trans out because we were going to move on to the crank hub install, I believe. I forget. I don't know what we were doing, but I had my crank locking tool. My crank locking tool had broke.
I don't know. That whole car was a shit show.
It fell into the bell housing, and I had to pull off the fucking transmission. It wasn't hard. It's 45 minutes to take that trans out, DCT. And to take the trans out, you have to take the intake manifold out to pull the starter. When I pulled off the intake manifold, one of the wires from the DME is underneath the intake manifold. One of the wires that goes to the oxygen sensor was pinched. It was destroyed because it was sandwiched between the intake manifold and the cylinder head. And that is when I discovered the lean code is coming from this wire that is pinched. So fixed the wire, pigtailed it, lean code was gone. The car drove great. Up until the car came back for more work, and you were driving it, and the car stalled on me.
Oh, yeah. That was a whole fucking shit show. Driving back to the shop and it fucking stalls.
The car's ready, and I'm having Elyse test drive it, and she's local. She's around town, and she calls me saying, hey, this F80 just stalled on me. It died. So I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. She goes, yeah, the cops are here. I'm blocking traffic.
There's literally like not even 2 minutes down the road. It was horrible.
So F80 stalls, and I head over to her. The cops are there. The cops are cool. They're blocking traffic for her. We call our tow guy. Yeah, we got a tow coming. Get the car back in the shop. And there was an issue related to a fuse that had popped. And that fuse, I believe, had something to do with the cluster. And because the fuse for the cluster popped, it took down the communication with the shifter, which is why it kicked you out of drive.
It was horrible.
It was just a nightmare. I fixed it in 20 minutes when I found the issue, but I was able to diagnose that car properly and find the solution in 45 minutes because we used the factory level software. No Autel, no Snap-on. We used a factory level BMW software
true and trusted
to diagnose the car. So just a funny story about an F80 that gave me a heartache in addition to all the other heartaches. So we tend to always get the cars that no one else can fix, and then it's our responsibility to fix them.
Which we do.
Yeah, which we do, but it's
takes
it's
us a while
kind of annoying when everyone wants a car back in a week, and it's like it's not going to be a week.
Yeah.
And I think we're very fair in what we price out on as far as diet goes. Sometimes you can't bill out 20 hours to find the problem where you got to make it make sense for both parties. But just a funny story I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like the S55 is just that platform for me that it's like one of those things I wish I could like. It's not that I don't like it. It's just not for me. I mean, I thought the G80 platform wasn't going to be, the G8X platform wasn't going to be for me either, but.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. When I saw those F58s doing, 4-second 60 to 130s in X3Ms, soccer mom cars, I was like, they're going to put that in a sedan? Shit.
Yeah.
We got to get our hands on that. So, yeah, I mean, pretty cool stuff going on here with the N54s. And again, not personal, guys. If you have an N54, we don't hate you.
No.
We like you. We'll sell you parts. We won't work on your car.
We just won't touch your car.
But just remember, don't be that guy that goes to your shop and wants to do the go fast parts and not do the maintenance. If you're going to drop $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on upgraded turbos, front mount intercooler, downpipe, charge pipes, fuel kits,
be ready to spend the money.
Put aside another $3,000 to $4,000 in gaskets, O-rings, nuts, bolts, Vano solenoids, PCVs, valve covers, water pumps, pulleys, tensioners. The list goes on.
Yeah.
Don't cheap out, and you can have a car that will be fit and finish and 110%. So in the next couple of weeks, we should have both of these N54s out. And then we got a bunch of other shit. We got the 1,500 brake horsepower B58 that we're working on. We're still waiting on pistons. We're not working on it. We tore it down. We have a bunch of parts here. We're unfortunately still waiting for the pistons to be done for...
Don't say it.
I'm not going to say it yet. You'll just have to stay tuned. So I will turn it over to Elyse, let her close it out. And I guess she'll let you know what we'll discuss on our next podcast.
Yeah, so definitely stay tuned for the B58 we're going to be building. Hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we should have the big reveal of why it's going to be making 1,500 horsepower. But until then, you're just going to have to stay tuned. But definitely don't forget to follow us on our Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok accounts at ZNM Performance. But yeah, thanks for watching. And don't forget to watch episode 4 coming out soon. We are going to be having our first special guest. So yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Take it easy, guys.